right, afternoon, Point of Mercy. Good to have you here on a Wednesday night. Super excited about what's happening here today. We've got, of course, Pastor in the middle. Afternoon, Pastor. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Fantastic. We've also got my lovely wife, Brittany, there on the end. How are you this evening, honey?
Doing very good. Blessed. I can't complain.
Let's go. So we announced this this past Sunday, but the reason we're all here today is we're actually going to interview Pastor, ask you some questions, and just give you an opportunity to share 40 years of ministry, sir. By the way, congratulations.
A year a minute. We're going to go a year a minute.
A year a minute. Let's go. We got a lot of ground to cover, right?
Yeah.
But this is going to be really fun, and we've got a bunch of folks on live. So here's what we want you to do. Comment, share, do all of that. But towards the end, I want you to save your questions for the end because we're going to start pulling questions out of the feed. So be sure to hang on to your questions till the end. We'll cue you to start posting your questions that you have for Pastor, and he'll answer you here on the stream. It is 7:10. I know Bible study typically goes to 8, but hey, let's see where this thing goes. Who knows?
That's 50 minutes.
That's 50 minutes. That's as far
I
as
get a
I'm
few
going.
more extra seconds there.
You get a few more.
I will say if people want to, grab a bite to eat, they can just watch and eat. So we have nothing really holding us back.
I am not obligated to answer every question that comes in through the comments.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
pass.
Well,
Hard
I was about to
These
say,
have not been
do you only get
filtered.
one? It's not a. Is it a veto? One veto?
I'll just say pass.
Pass.
Pass. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, I'm actually going to pass the mic to you, Brittany. Obviously, you've been with your dad longer than I have, so why don't you?
Just a little, though.
Just a little bit, though.
Not a whole lot longer. Yeah.
So why don't you kickstart the night?
That's
and,
not sarcastic. I mean, we were middle school sweethearts.
This is true. This is true.
Just a few more years. Well, let's just get right into it. What do you say?
Let's go.
So
60 seconds.
How old were you when you first went into the ministry?
Well, I preached my first sermon when I was 14.
When you were 14.
So.
And you were raised, in ministry with.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Papa Dean.
Obviously, my dad, my grandfather on my mother's side, Bishop Peters. On my dad's side, both uncles. One was a minister, one was a pastor. And then on my mother's side, two uncles, one pastor and one minister as well. So, yeah, I was surrounded by preachers.
No pressure.
No.
Well, I do want to ask, how did you recognize the voice of God calling you to preach? I think a lot of young preachers or people aspiring might struggle. How did you recognize that being, the voice of God kind of pulling you to preach?
Well, it was tough for me because being around so many preachers, and obviously my greatest influence was my dad. So having that influence, you almost felt like this is what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So I had to differentiate. Is it the voice of God, or am I hearing that's just what you're supposed to do? Mm. So the truth of the matter was, I was actually being called to preach 2 years before I started preaching.
Wow.
I just felt like I was just copying, that it wasn't the voice of God, that it was just me. This is just what I'm supposed to do. And so I think you could say that I probably ran from the call of God. But here's the thing that happened to me is the more I heard other preachers preaching, there were other men that inspired me as well. And the more I heard that, the more of a pulling that I felt and a passion that I felt. It went from me feeling like I'm supposed to do this, or it went to a true passion of something that I wanted to do. And the real call of God will scare the daylights out of you. whether you're 14 or 24. And so I don't know that I've ever been more scared than the night Dad looked at me on a Saturday night and he said, okay, you're preaching in the morning. Ooh, that was a Friday night, actually, and then all I had was Saturday to prepare. So
That's not a lot of time.
that's not a lot of time at all. So, but it was scary walking in that. And I had sung and played music in front of people, but whew, that was scary. The call of God will scare you.
Now I'm blanking. What was the name of the first sermon that you preached?
Psalm 68, let God arise,
God
let
arise.
his enemies be scattered.
Yes. How do you feel about that sermon? Like if that was on tape, do you feel good about it, or do you feel like
we've destroyed that evidence? You know, I actually kept that for a long time. It's somewhere, I just don't know where it is. I remember I had my foundation, and I started, and I said a few things, and then I just got stuck, and there was this long pause, and I didn't know what to say, and that, you talk about scary. I didn't know if I was coming out of that, and so finally I did. But yeah, it would be interesting to hear.
yeah. I don't have mine on tape. First time I ever spoke, but I was very, you gave me the greatest advice before I spoke. I actually spoke out of town, and you told me, you said, when you get up there, I don't want you to ever say you're nervous, because if you say you're nervous, you immediately cause the audience to interact with you out of guilt. Because they feel bad for you. They want you to, and they're not really going to necessarily listen to what it is that you have to say. They're just more or less worried about how you're feeling. He said, so don't tell them that you're nervous. Just let them know how excited you are to be here, because you don't want anything to hinder what God has coming,
That's right.
through your study and stuff. And I think if there's anybody watching this that's, maybe aspiring to be a speaker, a teacher, preacher, whatever it may be, that was the greatest advice you've ever given me. And I'm sure that it's, one of the greatest. There's so many things. But I'm sure that came from all of these years we're going to talk about tonight, just kind of learning how to be in the pulpit. That is just, people don't
be
even
confident.
realize that. Yeah.
Be confident up there. Speak with authority.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be arrogant, but be confident. Feel sure about what the Lord has given you.
Yeah.
You deal with your nerves. You deal with those things, and
exactly. Like you said earlier, if it's God, it'll scare you to death. But that doesn't necessarily mean you share that with the room.
That's right.
That's between you and
exactly
God.
Right.
So, what's your turn, runner?
Hey, real
Where are you
quick.
going?
So we are.
I didn't know you was feeling what I said. Like, my God, have mercy.
I receive it. I receive it. Hey,
Lord,
real quick,
mercy.
we do want to let everyone know. Let us know. We did take a moment to boost the audio to make sure that you all are hearing. So just let us know. Make sure that did come up for you. But good stuff. So I came into the picture when I was 15. And so I've always known you as a pastor, but you spent, again, a lot of your time, and even when you were pastoring, you were out, you're still doing evangelism. So
Sure.
So what was that transition like for you, like going from, hey, I'm on the road all the time, to now I'm a pastor, and just what that two dynamics look like for you in your ministry?
Excuse me. Well, the first thing first of all, my dad was was a born evangelist. So him being my major influence, I followed in his footsteps. The first thing that I did in ministry, of course, I taught Sunday school class, things like that. But I wanted to do what Dad did. I wanted to travel. I wanted to evangelize, and so that's what I started doing. I remember before I could even drive, I was riding. My first revival was right here in Nashville. Rode a Greyhound bus here and preached a revival for Brother Batson over here on the other side of Trinity Lane, on West Trinity Lane. And so that was, man, I loved it. My wife and I, we got married, went on the evangelistic field, traveled, fifth wheel, truck, all that stuff, spent years doing that. But the honest transition, and it was a big one, from evangelist to pastor. I'm assuming that's what you're asking me. From evangelist to pastor was learning people, teaching people. I had spent my time preaching to crowds, but not living with people. And so I expected people to act like the crowds. And when you are an evangelist, you're the star of the show for a couple, 3 weeks, 4, sometimes longer. And they receive what you're preaching. They're excited. They're motivated and all that. You leave them on a high. That's not pastoring. Pastoring, they're on a high, but they don't stay high. They come back down, and it's
Maybe they do.
Huh?
So, or maybe they do.
Yeah, those are the ones you have to deal with too. So it's a roller coaster ride, and so for me, that was probably one of the biggest adjustments, is learning the difference in preaching to a crowd versus preaching to people and living with people and teaching them. It wasn't that I didn't love them. I just didn't know. I spent those years, as an evangelist, you preach them into the altar. As a pastor, you don't just get them to the altar. You got to keep them in the seat. You got to keep them saved. Evangelist gets them saved. The pastor keeps them saved, and that is that was difficult. That was a big learning curve for me, probably the biggest.
That's good.
That's why I'm going to resign soon.
Whatever. Don't make me. I've got a question. Anyways, no, that is so good. Do you want me to keep going, Brittany, or do you have one you want to? She's
15,
laughing because
15 love.
Well, he and I went over a little bit of the questions, and he's a thief. So, way to go, bud.
We're taking care of matters. Okay.
Yeah. No, well, but,
questions matter.
Yeah, but truthfully, though, I mean, obviously, being an evangelist where you travel and you speak, what are you giggling at?
You too.
Yeah.
Stick around. Eric's got a mess. We're going to let you see a live demonstration.
No, but for real though, I mean,
counseling your kids is one of the hardest things.
Oh, that's great. But he asks a good question. There's a lot of depth there. In terms of being on the field where you're evangelizing, there's not much interaction with people other than
praying for them.
Yeah, and then at the altar they're like, "Hey, listen, I've been going through. What do you recommend?" And then you have this moment with them, right, where you can kind of speak into their lives. But then after that,
tell your pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm not here to counsel.
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of pass them on,
Yeah.
But now you're interacting with people and you're dealing. Did you find that kind of brought more of conflict, kind of some tension conversations? Obviously when you're having to shepherd people.
I made some mistakes, obviously.
Yeah.
Because you're just supposed to preach it, and they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But when this is the way it is, and bless God. But man, when you reach somebody, and a lot of people prayed through to the Holy Ghost in our revivals that were new, but I didn't see them after 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
But now they're there, and it's not you don't preach them into conversion.
Yeah.
You teach them into relationship. And I was used to just preaching them into the altars, and that was it.
Yeah.
But now you're having to preach and teach things that help people in a relationship, build a relationship with Jesus, or someone that's coming back to the Lord, which the Lord spoke to me. I don't know if this fits in or not, but when I was pastoring my first church, I was out mowing the grass. That day I was on the riding mower and I was mowing the grass, and the Lord just spoke to me and told me that I would have a ministry of restoration.
Wow.
And so my ministry has been very different. So I feel very strongly about people that come back to the Lord. I feel very strongly about people that come to the Lord as well. But I feel like that God has given me a ministry that really helps people as they come back to God. That's a very, very important thing. And so that had to be developed. I because of I loved being with people, and I was a big cut up and all that stuff, but it was just the pastor level was just a different. And I was 25, when I started. So
I would imagine that would kind of call you to get in the mud, so to speak, with somebody where they're
absolutely.
at, kind of pull them, almost more of a burden to carry as a pastor.
Yeah.
To have a ministry of restoration would mean that, I personally, we've talked about this multiple times. I think when you come from a calling of pastoral ministry, it's like God gives you, you call it a gift, but sometimes it doesn't feel like a gift of empathy. It's like I don't know what it is that you're going through. I don't sympathize in the sense that I've been there, but
Right.
There's this empathy that God gives you to feel what they're,
well, it's an empathy, but it's an anointing. It's a gift.
Yes. I
It's a true
wholeheartedly. Did you find though, like coming from evangelism to pastor, I would imagine that was a different weight altogether.
Oh, absolutely.
Than
It was you develop the heart of a shepherd.
Yeah.
It's totally different. There's a hireling the Bible talks about, but then there is a shepherd. Shepherd's not a hireling. The shepherd lives with the sheep, and then you're faced with big decisions. You deal with people that you want them to be a part of what's going on, and how long are you patient with someone that is doing wrong, and you're trying to help them, and you're trying to say, listen, that's wrong. You need to stop that. I'm thinking of a particular situation in the church that I was in Greenville, and there was a gentleman that I was using in some areas, but I wanted to use him in other areas. But there was one particular thing he was having a hard time. So I spent a long time being patient with that. And so as a pastor, you have to learn, because everybody is different. You don't just set the bar at a certain place and say everybody's got to follow along this. But each individual is different. And so it's that line of, I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be merciful, but there comes a point that you have to say, a decision has to be made. And sometimes, you make that decision, and, I've lost people over those decisions before. And then I've gained. There's been some people that sparked them, and they said, Pastor, you're right. I've got to, and you just hope. But at the end of the day, you preach the word.
Yeah.
You preach the word. And so, and I just had to learn to be patient and love them. If I can, as a pastor, and I don't mean to dwell too long on this, but if I can prove to everyone that is struggling that I love them and I'm being patient with them and I'm being merciful to them, but understand where I'm coming from too. Yeah. Understand where the Bible is coming from and what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
And those are tough things. Evangelists, they don't.
Yeah.
God have mercy.
Yeah.
I want to evangelize.
Well, your community I know you longer as a pastor than I did an evangelist, just because, as I grew up, that's what you kind of,
Right.
you kind of had dual hats because
Yeah.
you did still evangelize and still do. But I have noticed just in our home dynamic when I was, a teenager and living at home, Sundays are heavy. People don't realize, when that it's a sermon, great, let's go get chicken, it's heavy. And so when you, from the week, as the weekend approaches, not just Sunday, as the weekend approaches, as the developing of that sermon, it's not just like when you're going to a guest church, you're feeling the weight of the congregation, and then after Sunday, it's just like, I got to go home. I got I got to kind of
Decompress.
Yeah. And so I've witnessed that firsthand. The Sunday in our home church is almost, it's more tiring than somebody else's pulpit, But you've done such a good job, though, and it's your experience. There are things that as a pastor you say, but you don't say them as an evangelist. Don't shepherd somebody else's sheep.
Yeah.
So you're careful what you preach in someone else's pulpit.
Very
I've
much
always
so.
Admired that, and admired you had said you have a ministry of restoration.
You can be bold without being rude.
Yeah.
And I
in
try
love.
to be bold, but
Yeah.
not rude.
That's just so beautiful.
In other people's church, I don't care to be rude here.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
That's my congregation. I get it. You tell a beautiful story, though, related from the Bible, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I just think it's a story you could share with other people about the lamb that was in the mouth of the lion, and kind of what you say, kind of elaborate on what you tell us, your pastoral staff, on how to handle hurt sheep.
Right. Well, the story is David tells a story of the lamb that was lost, and the shepherd goes out to the one, and bringing him back. And the Bible says that when he reached in, the lamb was in the mouth of the lion. So when David, the shepherd, reaches in the mouth of the lion to get the lamb out, the Bible said that the lion rose up against him. And I always felt like that sometimes when you go after people that are drifting away from the church, or have drifted away, you reach in there and they're caught by that. Lion represents a spirit, and sometimes when you go after them and you try to pull them up, you're met with opposition and you're met with resistance. But sometimes that's not the lamb. That's what has the lamb. It's the spirit that has the lamb bound for that time. But you don't, you can get your feelings hurt and you can say, well, I'm not. You don't do that. I'm writing about that right now in my book, about making sure you don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. It's the enemy, and you're saving that person, from the enemy.
That's it. That's so incredible. That's not just, yes, church leaders need to have that mindset, but just other people. You have a relative or a friend that's in the clutches of sin.
Yeah.
Or how often are we to dismiss people or judge people or cut them off because they're just hateful little sinners,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you can approach it in a way of this is, a captured individual,
Right.
there is so much more grace that can be, easily extended.
Right.
Approach them in a mindset of prayer and grace and mercy.
Right.
That's one of my favorite stories you tell. So yeah, your turn.
Tag.
Yeah. Well, you were kind of talking about when you came into ministry. I didn't mean to butt in.
Oh, no. Listen, this it's awesome because
You're as one. That's the first counseling lesson.
That's right.
You all are as one.
Yes.
So it's not separate questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's together.
We have notes, and we both talked about this though. When we all when the three of us get together, we just kind of off the cuff conversations.
Sure,
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know, a lot of nuggets have just been dropped. Why don't you in the comments let us know what are some of the things that you're taking away? Because this is a lot. It's a wisdom. It's a lot of wisdom.
40 years to be exact.
This is good stuff. So
a lot of mess ups, a lot of mistakes, trial and error.
But isn't that the process?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something that I did one time. I think this is important for younger pastors, especially. Well, any pastor. I don't remember exactly what it was, but at the close of one of our services in Greenville, I said something, and again, I don't remember the details of it, but a couple had shared something with me, and it appeared when I said that I was coming against them, and I did not mean it. It didn't enter my mind. Okay, when I got through with the service, I don't know if I've ever told you this. When we got through the service and dismissed, as I'm walking out, my wife, which thank God for an awesome first lady and wife, she grabbed me by the arm and she said, "Honey, did you forget what so and so and so and so said to us the other night?" And I said, "Oh dear God, they're going to think I was throwing that at them." And it dawned on me, well, that couple left. They left and she said, "Well, I noticed that they left." And you know what I did? I said, "Come on." We got right in the car and drove straight to their house. Then I went to their house, knocked on their door, and I walked in the door saying, "Guys, I owe you an apology." I didn't start off with, "Now y'all might have taken," because there's a lot of pastors, bless God, they got to be right. It don't matter I'm right, you're wrong, you took it wrong. That's whatever. I said, "Y'all, I am so sorry. I promise you, I was not throwing off, or it just slipped my mind what y'all, and I would never, and I didn't lose any saints that day. I won 2 supporters that day, just because I was real enough to be wrong, just because I was open enough to just say, "Guys, I messed up, and would you please forgive me? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean it, but I still shouldn't have said it. It slipped, and I have that same feeling that I had that day. I was so sick
embarrassed and shame.
Yeah, but I loved them enough to say I'm sorry. To say I don't want to lose. They were involved in our church, and you know what? They're still. Pastor Jeremy Carver is there, and they are still very much involved in that church. Wonderful, wonderful people. And
wow.
I have to believe that me being transparent, helped that. That goes back to an evangelist might not have done that.
Right. Yeah.
Evangelist. Would have never known. Yeah.
I had a lady get mad at me. I saw Brother Jeremy the other day, and we were laughing about somebody that this woman got mad at me, and we were selling fireworks at the firework tent there in Greenville. I was in a little town.
The stories we could tell.
Yeah, I was in fireworks stores. I was in a little town called Mossheim, right out of Greenville. One of our tents were there. We were raising money, and I was in there by myself. And this woman got mad at me, and she come in that tent. She was going to our church, and boy, she was letting me have it. Well, I learned something from my dad. If you just won't argue with somebody, it makes them even madder. And so I just ignored her, and that made her mad. And finally, I pulled a Dean Livingston is what I did. I said, "Go on, just go on."
It's the hand gesture.
That was my dad coming out.
If you've never met Dean Livingston, you just did.
I said, "I'm not arguing with you. And every time she'd say so, go on, go on. Yeah, go on." And boy, she got so mad at me. She said, "You should have stuck to evangelizing because you ain't no pastor." Oh my Lord, I'll never forget that.
Wow.
That's the voice anytime you have conflict. That's the voice in the back of your head.
Oh, well, I didn't tell the backstory. I've been patient and kind to this woman. She's just kind of crazy.
She blew up in the fireworks.
Yeah. I wanted her to be a Roman candle. Roll
on out.
This ain't no festival. Boom.
Bit of a firecracker.
But in all sincerity, you have some crazy people, and crazy people can suck the life out of you, and you at some point you have to realize, you know what, about probably a French fry short of a Happy Meal. Let's move on. You just got to be careful with some of that. You don't.
But even if it's not, and we've had some
Crazy.
Oh, the stories we could
Oh,
tell.
absolutely.
But they're even perfectly sane, good people have a hard time recognizing healthy boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
With a pastor and his family.
Yeah.
And
It's free counseling.
Exactly. And so that was kind of how quick did you figure out boundaries need to be set?
I went. I watched. I'm a observer, and so I watched a lot of things throughout the years. Other pastors, family, outside of family. I've observed a lot. And one of the things that I learned and committed to, and that was this: God is first, family is second, and my ministry is third. Ministry at one time was evangelism. Then it became pastoral. So, but I never put the church above my family. I put God first, because without God I wouldn't have a family. But I need my family to pastor that church. And so that's my boundaries. That's my boundaries. And I'm going to eat supper. Unless it's an emergency, a 911,
Yeah.
I'm going to eat supper with my family. I'm going to go to bed at a decent hour, unless there's an emergency. That's totally different. Yeah. But that's the way I believe it. And I teach our leaders in our church. I don't want you to put this church above your family. That's not a good thing.
I love that I'm on the interview panel here because I can attest to that. I witnessed it firsthand, and I think that a great kind of repercussion of that decision is the fact that every one of your kids are in ministry.
Yes.
And it's because throughout you raising us, we saw you prioritize us. We felt that priority. But we also, even in those emergencies, you taught us compassion and understanding and sacrifice in those moments. And I think that it caused us to have a heart for what you were doing. And so inevitably, putting God first and then family grew the reach of your ministry. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like at this point, I've seen this so much. I mean, all of us have. People sacrifice their family on the altar of their ministry. God never asked for that. And so, yeah, I can attest to you setting those boundaries very, very early. I don't remember a time where they weren't set. So, yeah, I think that's probably, I could yell at the girls in the back. That probably is a big reason why they are where they are too. All of your kids.
Well, how many PKs do you know that I know over the years that they didn't have those healthy boundaries? Yeah. And so they, the words fell on me, but they have something against the church.
They're bitter, yeah.
They're bitter against the church because you took my dad.
Yeah.
You took my mom. I wasn't going to do that, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And
yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that is something that I value. If there was anybody that's watching this that's wanting to start ministry, in ministry, you've got a baby on the way or you've got kids, don't sacrifice your kids,
No, sir. Enjoy it.
At the same time, though, you showed us by example where to prioritize God and his church. We
when it's church time, it's church time.
It's church time. Yeah.
This is what we do.
Girls played softball, and loved it, and but church was church. Like there were boundaries there.
No compromise.
And I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, but we live in the South, and so a lot of people is kind of like, where do I prioritize church and sports and things, and I think there's a healthy balance, but
that's everywhere.
It is. Church is church, and teaching us that, I don't feel like we're damaged.
No.
So I value that. We didn't golf on Sunday mornings, do we? We went to church.
No.
We stuck to that. But yeah, that's, wow, amazing.
Well, my dad, I remember, and this may ruffle some feathers, but I don't care. This is what it is. When you're almost 54, a lot of things. I have lived excitingly to get to this moment where you can just say whatever you want to say. But I remember at 16, I got my first job paying for my car, and I missed one Sunday. I didn't even miss the whole service. I just missed half of it. When I got home, Dad was up waiting on me Sunday afternoon. That's back when we had Sunday morning and Sunday night. And he was waiting on me, and he said, how do you feel about not being there, today? He was only there. I said, Dad, I hated it. I can't, I want to be in church. And he said, well, what's that take? What's that? I said, well, I got a car payment, insurance payment. And Dad said, look, we'll make the sacrifice. I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll somehow make the sacrifice if you want to quit that job, because it looked like they were going to start working me more and more. Church times, he said, we'll make the sacrifice because you've got to be in. And so I saw my parents make a sacrifice to make sure I was in the house of the Lord. And that taught me that's how much the house of the Lord means to my family. Yeah. And so I've tried to raise you all the same way. The house of the Lord is very, very important. Yeah. Very important.
Absolutely. If that ruffles somebody's feathers, bless
yeah, we live in a different time, and I get it. I know economy's tough and people are having to work, but sometimes you can get in a rut and you can just say, okay, this, I just missed. This is just the way it is now. I don't think it has to be.
No,
I don't think it has to be. I think you should work hard to make sure you can be in the house of the Lord, especially no more services than we have. Mm-hmm. These days. So
we're
gonna lose. You go look at the analytics. It's gonna go.
We're talking about finances,
yeah.
But
please don't ask me about tithes.
Yeah.
We'll lose them all.
We've done this. Our faithfulness to the house of God and developing our relationships, and God has blessed us over the years. Each and every one of us has separate, immediate families and together. And I believe that it's because when you do your faithfulness to God, it applies God math, and
it does.
And so.
And he's faithful to you.
He is very much. You look like you had something.
I do. So
30 love.
Yeah. You have experienced a lot of changes in your life, evangelism to pastoring one church, another church, moving your entire family to another city to pastor another. How do you navigate transition? Like, I've seen you do this multiple times now.
Good question. Yeah.
And you're a master. And when I say you're a master at this, I'm just trying to give honor where I think honor is due. I know this is something that you pray about, you seek God about, but talk to us, because I think people, more so than not, they're in that, I'm in a change. I'm trying to transition from one area to the next. How do you navigate change?
Well, it's interesting you ask that. I'm almost finished with my book, and this week I'm finishing up a chapter entitled Leading in Transition. And one of the topics that I'm closing out with is change, because most of the time people don't like change. Change is difficult, which means transition is difficult. But this is why I believe that there's a lot of things I am not good at. But one of the things that I am comfortable with, and I believe it's a gift from the Lord, is transition. It's something, and I'm going to tell you where it started. It started when I started understanding timing, the timing of God. I understood the will of God, but I didn't understand the time of God, because you can get impatient with God. You can get frustrated with God. Why isn't this happening right now? This is your will, so why wouldn't you do this? So I had to learn that the timing of God is just as important as the will of God. Because if you step out of the time, you then step out of the will. You step into the timing of God and you trust His timing. Then not only step in, but you stay in the will of God. And so, will of God, timing of God, that helped me understand the transitions that God takes us through. I don't know, I think the transitions that you're talking about is ministry and things like that. I just, as that gift develops, and every gift should develop, it starts at a very infant stage, but as you get older, it's just like any other gift or any skill, that you have. You're doing things right now with the talent that you have with the woodworking and things like that. You're doing things now you couldn't do a year ago, but your skill is getting better. I think that's the way with the gift of God, the gifts of God. And so I watched my transition level go from an infant stage to a much more mature stage. And so I just got to where, honestly, I just could feel it. It was a Sunday morning, and I was in revival in Maryville, Tennessee, and I wasn't even teaching. I was preaching from Brother Carpenter. He was teaching, and while he was teaching, I saw myself teaching. Man, I was preaching conferences, camp meetings, great churches in Pentecost. I mean, we were at the pinnacle of our evangelistic ministry, and I'm like, what is this? And from that point on, in a matter of 24 hours, I called my wife. She was at in East Tennessee at the time in Johnson City. Wasn't able to be with me at that service, and so I called her. I started telling her what I was feeling about maybe there's a change going on, and she said, "Honey, you ain't gonna believe it, but I'm kind of feeling that too. And so it was a feeling that I had, and when that feeling happened, within hours, things started happening. Within a matter of a week, I found a building in Greenville, Tennessee. Within another week, I had 10, 15 sponsors going to sponsor us to start that church. But you see, it was the will of God. It was the time of God. And that helped the transition.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
I did not know the timeline. I knew that you were like that part of you seeing yourself, but how fast that happens. And that's one thing that is so
scary.
It's scary, but I've seen it happen. Like when it comes to, again, your gift and just knowing the time, it's almost like it feels like I'm waiting. You should write a song about that.
Yeah,
while
that's
I'm
right.
Waiting.
But like
right.
when it hits, like I've seen it happen multiple times in your life, and it just
Domino
happens
effect.
fast.
Yes.
And
when it happens.
Yeah, when it
Yes,
happens.
exactly.
And it's effortless, and it's just like I always think of.
That's timing.
It's timing, and this concept in the scriptures about God restoring the years that maybe even you thought you lost.
Yes.
Nothing was lost.
Right.
It was just placed. And
yes.
And if it's okay, can I sneak in one more question? Because I'm
I'm
loving
fine,
this.
yes.
Because you even talked a little bit about your sermon Sunday, talking about gifts, your talents, right? Talking to maybe a young person, somebody new to ministry, wanting to develop into something, right? They feel that urge. Number one, how did you and how would you recommend somebody identify their talents, gifts, callings, and to follow that up? How did you get comfortable claiming those in the sense that, so I feel like some people might be like, they would struggle with, well, I don't want to say that's my gift. I feel funny saying, I know my gift. You understand what I mean? How did you, number one, find it and then create the confidence in that?
Start with what you have. Appreciate and submit to your covering, because you're covering your pastor, your leader. if they are the right kind of leader. They want to get the most out of you. They want to help develop you, just like me with you all. I want to help make you the best that you can possibly be. I want to help make you go further than I ever went. A true covering, if you submit to that, first of all, I see things about you all that you don't even see yet. So the covering, that's why it's important, is because there may be some gifts. Maybe your gift will develop in a certain area that you don't know about yet, but you're not ready for it yet. You may not be ready for that maturing of the gift. It's going to take some time. So start where you are. Start with what you've got. It's okay to dream. It's okay to set goals and things like that, but just stay where you are and be content with where you are. Submit to that covering that is over you, because that covering is helping set your path, because they're trying to get you to destiny. They're trying to get you to the place that God wants you to be. It's not necessarily where I want you to be. It's where God wants you to be. So you have to trust the covering. And you never, in my opinion, you never get out from under that covering. But all of a sudden, I remember different transitions in my ministry. I remember being under my dad and just preaching at Souls Harbor. And I remember a particular Sunday, just the way I interpreted the scriptures and the way I put my notes together and the way I don't mean this arrogantly whatsoever, I just knew I'm at a different place. But I was patient where I was. Like David was patient. He's anointed to be the king, but he goes back and he tends to the sheep until the door opens up for him to go. But he knew, he felt it, he saw it. I'm going to a new level. I'm going to the next place. And so I could tell something was different that Sunday. From that point on, I could feel my ministry maturing. I could feel it. I could feel it happening. So I don't know that. I hope that answers that question.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Start with where you are. Trust your covering.
To your point about covering, you said
Yes.
that, and Bishop McCool commented, and to everything there is a season and a
Yes.
time to every purpose
That's
under heaven.
exactly right.
That's your covering,
Yes,
affirming what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's
because you will get impatient, and you got to have that covering that you can be honest with. You got to have that covering that sure, he was my dad, but it was my pastor. I'm frustrated. I want to do this. I want to do that. And hey, it's coming. It's coming. That's why I say trust and I can't say enough about the coverings. We're worried about the young preacher getting started. I'm worried about some of these pastors that don't know how to develop people anymore.
my goodness.
That are still so involved in their own things that they're not concerned about the others. But I know I keep referring back to my book, but it has a lot to do with that. It has a lot to do with loving those that you are leading and you're pouring into them. And you reach that point in your life, that you understand, I'm still supposed to give. I'm still supposed to give to people and preach to people and all of that. But as I'm pouring into them, I'm also pouring in to those leaders, to those ones that, so it's not to say that I'm not worried about the young ministers, but I'm worried about the coverings. It's just so important that they have somebody that they can come to and that you can see down the road a little bit, and you could say, let them grow enough, let them make some mistakes. My dad let me make some mistakes. Remember mowing the yard with a push mower out in Souls Harbor and thinking to myself, hey, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm a mighty man of God. I'm out here mowing the yard, and you folks that's passing by, you don't know what I'm going to be one day. But you remember a few minutes ago I said the Lord told me I was going to have a ministry of restoration. Guess where? I was mowing the yard.
Wow.
That's when that happened. We were driving back and forth from Bluntville to Nashville, 5 hours one way. For months we did that, and it was on the riding mower that I said, all right, Lord, this house isn't selling. I don't know what to do. I know you've called me to Nashville, but I'll just keep driving. Do you know, within hours, we got that phone call. Pastor, I want you to come and look at a couple of houses. I got a plan. And within just a few weeks, we made our move to Nashville. And then after, it took a little while, but the house finally sold. But, you know, that's why I mow the yard.
That's it. Pro tip of the hour: mow your lawn. Jehovah Toro.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Reading the Toro. Oh my God!
That's the first 5 books of the Bible. The Toro. That's why it's important.
The road is narrow, 0 turns. Oh, man. You know, to your point about timing, it has always been that way with you. I can think of Nashville being a dream. Well, that was probably the one thing that I think you wanted for so many years that took so long. But I can think of us moving from East Nashville to here. I remember you just casually said to us, we ain't going to be here forever, guys. We're going to sell this property. And come here, let me take you somewhere. And you took us to Madison. And I mean, like that
and
week?
It was super casual, too.
It was super casual.
Yeah.
What? We had no plans. You had no plans. You just said it. And then all of a sudden, you get the email from somebody. It was like, hey, would you be interested?
I felt differently when I drove around here.
Yeah.
I just felt differently. And we were talking the other day. When I tried out for the first time a church here in East Nashville, or there in East Nashville, when we drove in, we ate at that Popeyes.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
Here in Madison, yeah.
Right here, right. That Sunday night when I preached for Brother Batson, and he asked me how things went at East Nashville, I told him it was terrible.
He said,
I said I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then he began to prophesy, speaking to my spirit, and I received it. And I said, sir, I trust you as a man of God, and we will go back and pray over that property. That was in the Olive Garden across the street. Who knew?
You told me that a couple of weeks ago. I did not connect those dots. That's where we were.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And you remember, we were looking at a building on the other side of the mall. We were like, maybe God's going to open that up. But going back to transition, I felt it. I just felt it. I didn't know the particulars. I just felt it. And you know, Dad had passed away in July of 16, and not only you and I knew about, you know, I told a few folks that I didn't think we'd always be at East Trinity. But then, that email came in, and I'll never forget, you called me and said, there's an email. And that email was the company that bought us. Again, like you said, when it happens, it just happens.
And that's not a you thing. That's a God thing. You know, just.
It is, but even back to the covering thing, like, just, I don't know, this is my perspective. This is how, like, in my new decade, and even really learning it in the last decade, the thing that I learned, you know, because when you're young, you're impatient, you want to do this. Like, if you don't feel it, then it's not right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't try to, I trust where you're going.
Yeah.
And I do have the benefit of seeing it happen time and time again. But, like, to that point, even though, you know, we kind of addressed that, you know, younger and ministry and just in life and that, right? I mean, just got to live some life and let the Lord prove himself time and time, because he will.
He will.
Over
yes, he will.
He will prove himself.
Yes.
So, like, number one, if you don't feel it, absolutely, we shouldn't do it. But when you say, hey, I feel something, perk up, I say, all right, buckle up.
Yeah.
we're going somewhere.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't play the God card.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You
Yeah.
know, sometimes, I have been wrong before, but, you know, more times than not, you, like you said, your gift develops. And you just, sometimes I've said, and I just wrote this today, there have been times I've just looked at the staff and said, I have no other explanation other than I just don't feel it right now.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's that. I'm not saying we're not going to do that. I just don't think it's the time.
Oh, well, that's trusting your covering. This is all under that category. You are the pastor of this church. You are the lead pastor. And I think sometimes when people see our dynamic, they wonder, not a lot of families can serve together, unfortunately.
Right.
We have witnessed and seen some families split apart trying to work in ministry together, and it breaks my heart. But I had one person one time ask me, what do you do to get your dad on board with y'all's ideas? And I said, I don't know what you mean. Well, how do you convince him to get on board? And I said, I don't. If we have an idea and he doesn't feel it, okay. Because, on a secular level, he's the CEO. He's the CEO of the business. But even more importantly, spiritually, he's the pastor. If he doesn't feel this, I don't care if I agree or not. I'm going to get on board because he's my covering. He's my pastor. And I said, I've never had a situation. There's been times where you've said, I don't feel this yet. I would have probably moved sooner, but just because I had that opinion that maybe differed from his, I didn't sit there and buck on it. I said,
Right.
Okay, whatever. And I tell you, I've never been in a position where I looked at those decisions later down the road and thought, we should have went with mine. It's always been. But I think it's because you are so good at you are so good at being God's mouthpiece and not playing God. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you do that with humility, and I know that you can't say you're humble, but I can, and so that weight, you carry it very well, and this is how I feel in my spirit, not because I'm anything special, but it's how I feel, and that I think that's so important. Trusting your covering in that way, trusting the timing on what you feel. That doesn't mean that it's haphazard. It
Right.
just, you're waiting on the voice.
I'm blessed. You all are awesome with that. I don't demand it by no means, but you all, my other kids, are very good with that. Most of them are. I'm just kidding.
There they are. There's the head. The head popped up. Kiki's head popped up.
The pastoral staff that I work with, the same way, they trust that, and I think Jason said a few minutes ago. He said I've seen this work in you for several years, and sometimes it just there's no substitute for experience.
No.
Some things just take time, and you can't take that away. You just can't take that away, and so I didn't have this pastoral staff when we first got here. Why would I? Hadn't been through anything, hadn't done anything. But over time, you have those people that are, and hopefully the church, and I believe that they trust that they understand that one of the things that our pastor is he's a man of timing and transition, and so we, if he doesn't feel this right now, I don't. I don't know that I've never had anyone come up against me. No, I think, that's just never happened. Now they may go off and talk about me. I don't know. But I appreciate you saying that, because I've never wanted to be the kind of person that played the God card and said, this is what I am, the pastor here, and bless God, this is the way. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I think that's why. I think love always has a choice, and I think you just ask. You just say, hey, I don't feel it. And I'm asking you to go with me on this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You've done that, though, even in church growth. You always share your vision, good at sharing vision. I feel like when we are going somewhere as a church, and I feel like, let me know in the comments if you agree, high five or whatever, but you do a great job at sharing vision, casting
I appreciate
vision, and that's, it doesn't
I don't
feel.
want you to perish.
Because without it.
But that's the truth.
Yeah.
If I don't, the people, the people will perish. I've always looked at that one vision, but people perish. Y'all, I'm telling you, that's a heavy load.
Yeah.
And you have to develop ways of casting vision and getting people on board, because it's a perishing thing that will happen. You've got to let folks know, where you're headed, and when you stop and say, we ain't going nowhere yet.
Yeah.
Because some folks feel like a pause doesn't mean you're not doing anything. He knows this as well as anyone, being a personal trainer, and that is, as hard as you work out, when you rest those muscles, it's doing as much for your body as the working out process. And if you take that resting away, you could damage the body. And so I believe in resting. And sometimes when I'm not feeling like making a move, sometimes the Lord is just saying, rest, rest. So I think that's important.
You've shared with us in East Nashville, I can't remember what it was. We had something that we did, and it was a high, man. I mean, it was like a big turnout. We did this incredible thing. It was one of our first big, I don't even know that it was an event. It was just a very successful thing that we did. And we had worked so hard and got everything right. I think it might have been Project C, when we got in that building, the gym building. We had finished that and everything. We were in there, and I remember you told us, like, after that first Sunday, you told us in the weekdays when we're kind of, you said, guys, let me tell you something. In kingdom work, you can rest, but never stop. And it's okay that we rest for a season.
Did I say that?
You did. You did. And we've even talked about adding that kind of on our walls in our meeting rooms, because it's that's so great, because it's true. Resting is so important. You can't, that's what leads to what a lot of people feel is burnout. And I think it allows the enemy to kind of take root into your heart if you're just constantly going. But just because you rest doesn't mean that you stop. It's a difference.
There's been a lot of arguments caused from lack of sleep,
yes,
and lack of rest.
Yeah.
Maybe what's wrong with y'all tonight?
We're all good. I will say we've learned, and that's from you. We've learned that, and we shared that with somebody. First of the year, maybe we told them, don't make any decisions, sleep. And they were like, what? And that's classic,
I learned
my
that
dad.
from my dad.
Yeah.
I learned that from him.
Just sleep, because you will be amazed.
Middle of the day, Dad say, boys, I need about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You go lay down and take a nap.
Just that rest, man. But there's clarity after it. There's clarity after it.
Yes.
And
well,
so, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, it's brain overload, and you're like, oh, okay. And you sleep, and that next morning, it is clearer. You're like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
So rest is very,
Matter of
very
fact,
important.
when we moved to Nashville, or rather when we were done with, you pastored in Bristol with your dad, my grandfather, for a couple of years, and I remember it was the morning that you kind of woke up and looked at us and said, guys, our
Here's
season.
what we're gonna do.
Yeah, it was after an evening of rest. Yeah, I mean, tough decisions can be made after some sleep.
Transition time. It's time to don't make you can't transition without clarity.
Yeah.
Don't do it without clarity. Don't make the move without clarity. You gotta feel that. There's still a level of faith, still level of risk, but that maturing gift helps you to understand this is. I woke up that morning. I knew we were. I just knew it. I knew it. Yeah. No doubt in my mind.
And look at, Bristol's doing great, and they're a part of our congregation, and I'm sure tuning in tonight,
Well, and there's things that I've done I didn't really want to do, but I felt like God wanted me to do it. You mentioned Project C. I never wanted to move in that building, that gymnasium. I hated that thing. I never want, listen to me.
We agreed by the end of it.
Oh, dear God, I didn't want to move in there. But you know what? I felt like I had some good advice about it. Brother Barry Hardwick, who's been a great advisor to us, connected to this church. Obviously, his grandfather, Brother Hardwick, our Brother Benson. And he, so we just knew financially, this is what we're supposed to do. How long were we in there? 5?
No, not even that.
Not even that?
2 to 3 years.
And you know what?
We moved in
13,
beginning
didn't
of
we?
14.
Oh, 14.
And we
That's right, December.
sold mid-17, 18.
Sold some
so
stuff.
We were here mid-18.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And you know what? You learned a lot in that.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. First project of life.
Yeah, I mean, you were a,
First big faith step.
my goodness. And that could have been, that was a part of it, what you learned. All of that was.
Well, the fascinating thing, we talked about this, but to your point, like, you didn't want to do that, but you knew that we needed to do that.
Yeah, I knew it was the will of God.
It was the will of God. And here's the fascinating thing about that. I remember when the company was wanting to, because the plans were buy it, doze it, put up condos, right? Well, this was at the peak at that time. And they wanted to they scheduled a walkthrough of the building. And which was kind of, I mean, it wasn't odd, but it was kind of like, because we were already so far into the deal. And
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, so we met, and they just wanted to see the gym and wanted to see everything that had been done, and great folks too, by the way. Well, at the end of it, they let us know why they wanted to show up. They were like, look, we've got some other projects going on, and price of construction's kind of high right now. And so we were kind of on the fence whether or not we wanted to close this deal, but we looked at this property, and we have no problems. What you guys have done, we could do a little bit of work to this place and just rent it and sit on it until we decide to do something different.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment it was like the Lord spoke to me.
That's why.
You got the building ready not to just move in, but to sell it.
Yeah.
It had to be to a certain, because I mean, it was not ready. I mean,
Right.
we put a lot of time and effort.
Yeah. It had been on a
Sure.
pause since like the 80s.
And then God, a season of sacrifice was also a season of sowing, because sowing is sacrifice. And then he brings us here, and it was a turnkey job.
Oh yeah, like
We didn't do anything,
it was.
and we ended up. It's just amazing that we could spend 2 hours just.
I think your mic is a little off.
Yeah, check one.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. Gosh, I know it's a little bit after. Are you okay? Is this?
Yeah, I don't want to
is
bore
everybody-
I don't want to bore the people that are watching.
Okay.
We have kept a very engaging. It's good now. We've kept a very engaging audience because we still have great numbers.
I hope that picked up your questions. I hope our mics.
Oh, I think so. I think, because
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any confusion. Let us know,
Yeah.
guys, if you're maybe in the comments or something.
Yeah, I
if you
think
can
it's
hear
my
us
fault. I
well.
just didn't have my mic close.
We don't
enough.
have our you don't have your preacher voice on tonight. We
Yeah,
have
right.
your talk
Yeah.
voice.
I will. Yep, much better. Fantastic.
Perfect.
Hey, let me say this. If you have some questions on Facebook, that's where we're catching the comments. Why don't you go ahead and put them in there? We'd love to get some feedback. And there's been tremendous, great comments, lots of love, lots of everything. And while we do that, while we wait on some comments, let's see here. Everything's looking good. Everything's looking good. So
Everybody's loving this.
let me ask you this, okay? Because to your point, we transitioned into this building, and just the amazing difference. And to your point, God just worked out a miracle. This place is a miracle, and we're catching momentum. And then there was this year, I think we called it 2020.
Hindsight.
What was it like being a pastor there in the early when everything
Oh, great
shut
question.
down,
Yeah.
and well, it looks a lot like this.
We said that earlier.
Well,
yeah.
should we go 6 feet apart?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
like, talk about that, because I mean, that was.
Well, the toughest thing about it was we had just come out of IAF conference,
Yeah.
which was,
Amazing.
oh my goodness, great conference that year, as every year. But our church was at that breaking point. You could just feel, I mean, systems were in place, things were ready. We had plans, we had things we were getting ready to do, we were getting ready to launch. Oh my goodness. And that's what made it even more tough, is knowing where our church was going. Yeah. And so that made it tough. But there it is again, you're leading in transition. And so what I did, I tried to go ahead, and you had some churches that were not going to cancel, and I respect that and all that, but we didn't know. You know what? We formed a medical team here, and we listened to them, and they did a great job in advising us about what to do. So we got all this technology. Let's use it. And so that's what we did. We did a show from the house called Living Inspired, which was a good good thing that happened. So though it was tough and it was very difficult, 2020 is bad because it started with the church and it ended with me. Yeah. And that's what's made it so difficult. March, the shutdown. May, my mental breakdown. And then October 22nd, my diagnosis. So 2020 is no doubt the worst year of my life, other than a beautiful grandbaby.
She's the exception to that year.
She is.
We had Adley Bray.
Best thing that came out.
But to your point, I mean,
year.
that was she was a blessing. But
yes.
I was in postpartum. There was just a weight. All of us kind of felt that year, and then it did. It ended in that diagnosis that none of us saw coming. I mean, kind of continue on.
We go back to Sundays in person. We continue the Wednesdays, and then following those numbers. Yeah. One of the things that I think is important as a leader in transition, because you can start the transition, but then you're in it. So when you're in it, you have to communicate. And so I feel like I do a decent job in communication. And I just tried to keep telling the church, it's not always going to be this way. I know this is tough watching from your house. It's going to be all right. We're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. It's going to, and I feel like, communicating that and still, and if you remember, one of the first things that I said was, I said, folks, we'll get through this, but we got to stay united. Yeah. We
absolutely.
Yeah, because the devil is behind this, and he wants to shut our churches down. Yeah. And we're not going to let him do that. We are going to do what we need to do right now because of what's going on in our nation and with the pandemic. But we've got to stay united. And then the enemy, he fought from time to time. But I'm proud of this church. I believe we may have lost a handful during that time, but not many at all. Some churches, their crowd still isn't back. I know one church, he said, Pastor, we're not even at 50% yet. And there's a lot of churches, but I'll have to say Point of Mercy did awesome, staying united, staying, loving one another. And
you gave us a message before kind of in the beginning of the shutdown that I really think set the pace for our congregation. And it was for us, the famous video on the back deck.
Oh,
where you sat there, but that was really the pace.
Faith. Where to put faith?
Yes. Where do you put it? And I think that really helped our people step into that? Because I don't even think it had really gotten horrible.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
the
that
Oh
was-
no! Like I
Yeah.
remember because we were watching the news together, and
Yeah.
we were still kind of in this like shock. And you slipped, like you just casually just got up and just walked it, and we were like, I wonder where he's going.
and then we get our
And then we were like,
our
and
phones
then all of
rang.
a sudden, yeah, our phones were like, what? Oh,
Wow.
we had a download. Here we go.
Yeah. That's in itself its own transition. You kind of learn to pastor virtually. And
Living Inspired helped that.
it did.
Being on there every single day and prayer with the people.
I saw the most incredible things I've ever seen virtually.
Yeah, saw
just-
healings on there, and
Yeah.
and the enemy, fought that.
But that
for
was
me.
during, what was that? What was that? That was throughout June and July, right? It
Well,
was through the summer.
through May. It
Yeah.
went through May and maybe some of June because we did some graduation.
It did, but I saw you.
'Cause I got COVID in July.
Yeah. I saw you go through that mental breakdown, and every day for a while, 11 o'clock, even in spite of it.
Yeah.
And that was going to be like, I know we're running late, but pastoring, especially in your current current situation, your health journey, how do you navigate your mental health, physical health, and pastoring? How does that look on, because you step up here and you preach, and even in the Living Inspired, going through your own battle, waiting on your own healing, and you preach, how does that look for you? Kind of take us inside your mind and how you shepherd during that season.
Well, obviously, it's going on 2 years now. There's been miracles along the way. This is a God thing, and I recognize that. Took me a little bit, but I recognize that. I had men of God that spoke into my life, and my Uncle David let me know from the beginning, you let God take care of the healing. You preach, teach, and lead. And so God healed me that weekend, healed my mind.
Yes.
And so it's been different. It's been different ever since then. But the truth of the matter is, I'm a pastor, and I'm going through fighting a particular disease. Gonna win. I am winning. Healing is happening. The completion of that healing is going to happen. But what pastor do you know that's not going through something? For me, it's a particular disease. For another one, it's anxiety, it's stress. I got a pastor that he and I talk every week, and he still struggles with it. So for me, it's a disease. For another, it's stress. It's another pastor fights depression, severe depression. Another one, it's a heart issue. Another one, it's a whatever. Every pastor is going through something, and the enemy is attacking, and that's what's going on. And we're living in the last days. And my mental approach to this is, if I can get up, and I'm gonna get up and preach and teach and lead. If I can send a message and say, hey, no matter what I'm going through, I'm still going to do what God called me to do. I hope that sends a message to any other pastor that's going through something that lets them know, bro, you can do this. Sis, you can do this. And I hope it sends a message to church people, saints that go to church, because everybody's going, through something. Who has a promise of tomorrow?
Yeah. None of us.
I get news every week. There's something. I had a friend of mine, my age, pass away. A first lady, pastor's wife, tore me up, and I just, nobody's promised tomorrow, whether there's a disease or whether it's COVID. It doesn't matter what it is. Nobody has a promise of tomorrow. But that first surgery that I had, that biopsy, I was laying in that pre-op room. They're getting ready to do the anesthesia. And I was laying there, and I was thinking, what in the name of God is going on? Where did this come from? And I was looking up, and they had a TV in that little room. I may have told this. And I was watching TBN, and it was a Guy Penrod concert. Beautiful, wonderful singer, beautiful songs. But the last song he sung was, "Because he lives, I can face tomorrow." And the tears began to fall, and I knew it. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Whatever report comes, I can face it because I know who holds the future. And life is worth the living just because he lives.
Did you know that was playing in the waiting room? They took Mom to a private room because we had connections. And that was playing
I had no idea.
at the same time. And she was FaceTiming me. And we both just started crying. And we said, that's from God. That's from God. Because he lived at the same time that was happening for you. God gave like a unified message to our family.
How many times has that happened in
it's
almost
incredible.
2 years now?
Too many times to ever deny his existence, ever deny his faithfulness, ever deny his goodness.
And what he is doing.
Yeah.
This is it's a work in progress, and if he wanted to take me, he could have already taken me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'd be in a pretty good place too.
just a bit. Yeah.
A woman told me the other day she's going through something too. She said, "Hey, don't you threaten me with heaven."
I think we heard a pastor one time say, you could die or something, and he goes, "Yeah, that would be horrible, and be with Jesus."
Oh, yeah.
It was very
around
sarcastic.
the throne of the Almighty God.
Oh man, but yeah, I mean that's wow, incredible. We actually have some questions that have rolled in. Chris Trimble. Hey, Chris. We've got a couple here. We're going to get to Chris and Gabby. So we're going to get to you guys. How do you identify gift?
Wait a minute.
What?
Who is this now?
This is Chris Trimble.
Chris Trimble.
Yeah.
You said Gabby.
Well, she's next, yes, because I believe
Because isn't she married to a Chris?
she is.
Oh, you threw me there.
That's funny, yes.
Yeah.
No,
you got them crossed
Trimble.
up.
Yes, we did. That's great. That's awesome.
Okay, sailing.
So this is Chris Trimble.
Okay.
How do you identify a gift versus a talent? To be exact, cooking is a talent of mine, but I don't feel that it's a gift. He has a bit of an urge to teach. So good question. Really good question.
Yeah, personally, I feel like a gift is more spiritual and a talent is more physical. You know, I think you have some physical talents, some physical abilities, but I think those true gifts, because how many times is gift used in a spiritual sense in the Bible? It's the gift of the Holy Ghost. Yeah. It's spiritual gifts. It's never spiritual talents. Now you got to have talent. Talent can help you with that gift, certainly. But I think a gift is more on the spiritual side, which is why you need a covering, and you share what you're feeling as far as a gift. But I also believe in your talent. I believe they can work hand in hand, and somewhere in that talent, because talents and gifts both glorify God. Yeah. And you should find a way in those gifts and talents to glorify Him. You can cook for your pastor and glorify God.
Yes, you can, Chris. Hey, listen, the Alfredo.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. To his point, too.
I got an L birthday coming up.
Yes, right around the corner. Yeah. So I have a talent for woodworking, and I love it. But I feel like God has gifted me in speaking.
Right.
And I've reached this point in my life where I realized that I was hiding behind my talent and not stepping into my gift.
There you
And
go.
so I would argue that it's important to listen to the voice of God and your covering, because if it hadn't been for my covering, my dad, my husband, because my husband's the head of my house.
Right.
He leads me. He leads her. He's the leader.
He can still a question if he wants to.
Yeah, every day. But it took you guys to kind of remind me of my gift,
Right.
because I got lost in my talent and kind of hid behind it. And now I'm trying to kind of decipher that feeling of using my talent as a great outlet to clear my mind for my gift. So it's that balance, because I think God gives you both. But
don't ever give up on that gift.
Yeah.
Don't ever give up on that.
Or that talent. It's an incredible thing, but understand, the spiritual gift, that's your...
Push yourself, always. Push
Yeah.
yourself to cook better,
Yeah.
to do better woodworking, to be a better preacher, to be a better singer, to be a better teacher. You're constantly pushing yourself.
Jesus had a talent, and he
Yes.
had a gift.
Absolutely.
It's one of those, it's matter of fact, I connect with Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the woodworking field.
Yes.
But so understanding that, I think, is key, and I'm navigating that myself personally. I feel your question on a deep level, Chris.
You push yourself in your talents and your gifts, and then you reach a certain point as you're pushing yourself, you start recognizing it in those that are younger than you, and you help push them as well.
Yeah.
It's important.
And it's multiple talents, really. I mean, you could do multiple things.
Yeah.
For me, for a while, it was music. It's still, we write songs, play music, and things like that. But I mean,
That's a gifting. I mean, you have some talent in it because you play and stuff, but that's a gifting. The words that the Lord gives you.
So, Jason, do you have Gabby's question?
I do. It's actually
Okay.
from Chris.
Oh, it
okay.
is. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool,
this is actually
awesome.
Christopher's question. And he said, Pastor,
Still on.
oh, here we go.
There you
Sorry.
go. There you go.
I need to, anyways.
Preacher voice.
I thought we lost you.
Yeah. When you start trying to get more in tune with your calling and digging deeper into God's word to find out your calling, it seems for Christopher, he gets attacked. Did that ever happen to you? And if so, what were some things that you did to conquer those attacks and draw even closer to God, to have his promises revealed?
So when you're trying to follow your call or answer your call, you get attacked.
Almost like the more you lean into that calling,
Yeah.
the more the attack
Did
comes,
I ever
is how I
experience
read
that, and how do you get some things you just know is going to happen. And anything you do for God, the enemy is going to attack. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. The enemy is not going to stand by and just let you fulfill your calling, fulfill your ministry. He's not going to do that. So first thing you have to do is, as you are leaning in, you have to know what's coming. And be careful what you verbalize, because the enemy can only hear what you say. He cannot read your thoughts.
Oh, that's so good.
So be
Yes.
careful what you say. Bless God, I'm getting ready to do this. No. Some things you keep to yourself. But it goes back to the basics. When he attacks, I believe I talked about responding to the attack of the enemy a couple weeks ago on Wednesday night. But obviously prayer is important. I think that's where the covering comes in again. I know we keep coming back to that, but I think that's where the covering comes in. Pastor, let's find out. Let's find out where are you trying to head to? There was a bishop. He was one of my favorite Bible teachers, Bishop Bell in Chicago, Illinois, said something I never forgot, and that was this. He said that for every calling, that there are demons that know that calling. And that he talked about stepping in the grace room and taking a calling, taking a gift and walking out and saying, this is what I'm called to do. This is what he said, make sure you get it right, because there will be a demon assigned to you that knows that calling and knows that gift better than you do. And if you chose the wrong one, you will not be able to handle what you have chosen to do. So as the covering, I try to make sure that people understand, you can chase a calling or a gift that maybe is not yours, but if you get the right one, the Lord said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. You're being attacked. There's a messenger that's attacking you. And so Paul says, what am I going to do? He said, hey, my grace is going to cover you. And so that's your covering is important. Your prayer life is important. Communicating what's going on, getting that good counsel, getting that good advice is very, very important.
I hear the voice of our bishop also. He'll say, resist the devil and he will flee from you.
Yes.
And it's not to say, well, if you just resist, that's not it. It's meant to be encouraging that the weight of your attack will not be forever, that there will be a season of fleeing, of relief. Just keep on, hold on, keep resisting. I think finding your community is important too. Within your local church, finding the people that kind of can help, have a healthy level of fellowship.
Well, this is why we bear one another's burdens.
Yes.
Till he asked the question, who knew Christopher Cross was, going through this? Before Chris Trimble asked the question, who knew that he was struggling between talent and gifting? So this is why we pray for one another. This is why people have got to stop being so self-centered and it being all about them and all about what they're. But God help me. But Lord, learn to pray for other people in the church. Learn to encourage other people in the church. Feel after the Holy Ghost. Be sensitive to the Spirit of the Lord. I wonder why someone hasn't already tapped into that. Why hasn't someone already? Why aren't we spiritual enough to have already known? Brother Chris Trimble needs our prayers. Brother Chris, I'm not getting on or rebuking, but I'm just saying we need to get to that level where we are feeling, we're bearing one another's burdens, but we're feeling each other's needs, that we're able to come up to somebody and say, I believe you're going through something, and I just want you to know that I'm praying for you.
On that
discernment,
note,
at its finest.
Well, on that note, actually, even above some of the comments, Paul Ashby actually asked if you could maybe share some, maybe more moments in terms of revelations, or just that moment of like, hey, I realized that my ministry increased. I had a leveling up experience. Like, do you have some moments where maybe that happened for you that you remember well? Like, oh wow, I didn't expect to operate in that gift or do that, or oh, all of a sudden I can't believe I had that answer for something. What was that like for you?
There's been several of those moments, for me. Like I said, that Sunday morning that happened. And when those moments happen, you build on those moments. It changes your interpretation of the Bible to a certain extent, or how you see, God starts revealing things to you in a greater. These are levels. That you get to, and then I've reached that level of. I knew that I was an evangelist. My wife and I evangelizing then, and I remember being in a revival, and we was at Brother Hogg's when he was in Whitesburg, Kentucky, and I don't remember how many weeks we went. The place was packed out. People were getting the Holy Ghost, and I stepped into a realm I had never stepped in my life, and I said, there are 5 people in here right now that need to stand up. I've got something I need to tell you. Wow. And I want you to know 5 people stood up, and I spoke to each one of them. And Brother Hogg told me after church, he said, "Son, you had no idea what you were saying. You had no that was the Lord." That's never happened to me quite like that
I was
before.
going to say that's so out of character for you. I mean, that's
yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, but that's what the Lord needed, at that, at that moment. And so, and then there are other times, like I said, leading into pastoring. Look, y'all know how I feel about the decades that you live. Your decades, you provide something different. 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50. I felt different at 30. I just knew something was different about my ministry. I shared it with you when you turned 30. I just prayed they wouldn't crucify me at 33. But felt something different at 40. Knew something different at 50. I knew there was a change in my ministry when I turned 50. My Uncle David told me it was coming. And he told me what would happen. He said, your ministry is going to do this. And, of course, I received it. He's another part of my covering, and an amazing covering at that. And I remember I received it, but I didn't feel it. It wasn't happening, but it happened. And I've had to, I've had to step into that role that he said would happen.
With each decade, I remember 50 easier than I did 40. I was a bit older. And I remember that was the first time I've ever seen, spiritually, I told you during a conference, we had a prayer for you before you went up and preached, and you opened IAF that year. I want to say it's that year, wasn't it?
2020?
It was maybe it was the...
Were we here?
Yeah, it was the first year we were here, I feel like.
Might have been 19, I'm not sure.
Might have been 19, but I remember I saw you chairman. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you were
chairman. It might
chairman.
have been Jubilee year for IAF.
I feel like it was. I feel like it was Jubilee for IAF. I saw your ministry shift.
IAF was 69, and that would have been 19.
Yeah, it's like I could physically see a shift in you. Of just leadership and things like that. And I know some people are like, really? But, when you're in that place spiritually, you feel it, and other people that are in that place with you can see it. It's really visible. So to your point, it's a shift, and people around you that are close to you recognize it. They really do. And I think it's important. I told you, Dad, I feel like I saw that. And I think people that are going through their own transitions, if you see someone in that transition with humility, not as the voice of God, but as something you observed, share with them, what you feel that you saw.
Well, the covering sees it. Mm-hmm. The covering foresees it.
Yeah.
But the people see it.
Yeah.
That one that's over you knew it was coming. Those ones that you are around see it when it happens.
Yeah.
And that's important. So to Brother Paul Ashby, who was a faithful young man, and you know that as well, and doing a great job in ministry. I will tell you, Brother Paul Ashby, that I'm seeing a transition in your ministry as well, and that's your overseeing pastor. But your lead pastor has shared that with me, and told me on the phone the other day, so I'm telling you, Brother Paul Ashby, he's, so it's, ministry, you're covering foresees, but the people, they just see. They see it. They see it when it's happening. So hope that answers your question.
Something happens with children too, like when you have children. There's a life change and a ministry change.
It all works together.
It does. By the way, Brother Chris Trimble said he could definitely make that food situation happen for you.
Anointing.
Yes. And TJ Pruitt says, yes, some of my greatest battles have only been broken when I started praying for someone else's needs. Wow. Yeah, Paul Ashby says, thank you so much, Pastor. That's so true, TJ. I find that I can't, on a selfish side, I can't hate who I pray for. You know what I mean? And it keeps your heart right, but it's amazing what God does in your situation when you step in and pray for someone else's situation.
Absolutely.
All right, I got maybe the final question.
Ooh,
maybe if this is okay,
final
because
question.
we've kept you. Thank you, by the way, for
Yes.
this is real overtime.
No.
Like,
no. We hope you've enjoyed this 2-hour special.
yeah, for sure.
That's what it is.
But that's actually kind of my next question. It's for you, but it's also for everybody that's online right now. Like, for me, this has been so awesome because, again, life is just so busy. But like, even for me, who, I mean, I know we live beside each other, but like, I can't think of the last time we had a chance to just like do this. And I'm saying that to say I've gotten so much value out of just hearing you speak on these matters. Like, to your point, hearing from the covering. And for you and for everyone else, if you enjoyed this as much as we did, let us know. And if everyone enjoyed this enough, what's the chances that in the foreseen future we could do this again?
Sure.
Yeah, especially crowd questions. These are great.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This is
I
awesome.
have no problem at all doing this. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I really feel like a lot of people got some great, they got some great, they got their questions answered. Like, I mean, seriously, like, even going back to that, the talent and the gift, that was such a great.
Oh, yeah, they're coming in.
Is it coming in?
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Sister Trina says, let's do a series.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. It's coming.
Yes.
It's coming. Yeah.
The hearts are coming
I was about
in,
to say,
you
I'll
guys.
just close it now.
Yeah.
I want to also say of course, I had been preaching for a few years before my wife and I got together, but the completion of my ministry was when the Lord put us together. And your spouse is so vital with what you do. I mean, she has just, my wife is an amazing woman that I love so very much. 35 years we've been together. She knows me so well, and has helped me, with so many things. And I can't imagine. I've had to counsel ministers that their spouses just gave them a fit, wouldn't listen to them, and sometimes vice versa. And I can't relate to that. I try to counsel with that and offer help, but we've been a team since we were young, just like that you all are, and that's so important. So in all the 40-year celebration and all of that, my wife is a part of that. I could not do it without her. Could not go through what I'm going through without her. And then after that, you all, my family, I couldn't. Just things I asked the Lord to do with my family, He has done. It's been an amazing thing, and my son-in-laws are just great. So so far so good. We're doing pretty good.
You guys definitely love our First Lady. It's coming in. She is our rock star, best family ever.
Yes.
Incredible, beautiful. I love your wife so much.
Yes.
Sister Violet, by the way.
She
not
has
like a
saved
man
you
or
all
something.
from a lot of things. Because
Yes, she
I can
has.
get a little high strung.
Yeah. I was gonna say, when you were talking about, kind of having to talk about the pastoring versus evangelism, when you talk about the hard stuff, if you'll notice, sis will just kind of not be in the auditorium. She's like, I can't take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she is definitely the
It's one.
keeps you calm,
the two
right?
becomes one.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree. Wow. Well, this has been awesome.
This has been a blast. I hope you all had as much fun as we did. We're going to go ahead and sign off, let you get home, get in the bed. I'm sure we're probably going to have to get our kiddos. I'm sure they do some cleanup.
it's going to be a fun weekend.
It's going to be an incredible weekend. Saturday, great party here, 2 to 4. Is that right? 2 to 4 p.m.
We will be showing the UT Florida game.
On the big screen.
Let it be known. We've
We'll
got
show
that
it.
worked out.
Yes, we've
We have the technology.
yes,
All right.
yes.
So that will be here. So everybody make sure to stop by. And then we got a huge Sunday service, 11 a.m. We got Pastor Bobby McCool
It's
in
gonna be
town.
awesome.
And it's just going to be the best. And by the way, number one, just ahead of time, congratulations on 40 years.
Yes.
But more importantly, thank you. Thank you for 40 years because my life is a direct impact from what you have committed to do for God. So I thank you, our family, thank you, this church thanks you.
Happy early birthday too. just
Yes.
combine it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this again though, guys. Get your questions ready. It's gonna happen. So it's awesome.
Awesome. All right, everyone take care. And I don't know if we're going to have a fancy sign-off or not. It might just cut. But, yep, that's what it's going to be. So we'll see you this weekend.
See you Saturday.